The money that is spent on the registrations for this poker paddle go towards the student education programs that the Lakers put on, the main one being the thing that Hillary did at the biological station. So we have some sponsors for that. It's a day on the lake. People paddle around the islands of the Narrows, picking up a poker card to try to create the best poker hand possible. They do that with non-motorized craft. I happen to be an open water swimmer, so I'll swim the course, and my friend over here, Ramon, he's an open water swimmer, so we'll swim 3.5 miles around the islands and picking up a poker card along the way. And then we have some cool prizes. We have entertainment. It's a great spot on the lake, and really a fun thing with dancing and a picnic and a silent auction for some kind of neat prizes and things like that. So if anyone's interested, they should pick up a card. And again, much of the proceeds go towards the student education programs that the Lakers put on. So thank you very much. Back to Sean.
Alrighty. So, okay. Do you want to?
Oh yeah.
Alright, so those cards are located up on the table along with some information.
And some raffle tickets. We're raffling off a poster.
Oh, yeah.
We're raffling off a poster. So if anyone hasn't signed up, sign up now.
So yeah, there's cards up here. If you haven't signed up yet, you can win a Flathead Lake map poster. Alright, so I think we can get started now. Today's presentation is actually, I think it's incredibly fascinating. I'm really pleased that we have two folks here to talk about probably one of the more important aspects of Flathead Lake water quality conservation that are happening around the lake here, is that we have with us Julie Spencer from the Bigfork Sewage and Water District, or something along those lines. Is that close enough? All right, close enough. But anyway, the wastewater treatment plant is probably the most, I would say, is probably close to the most responsible, other than the wilderness that is in the watershed, for maintaining the quality and clarity of Flathead Lake. So wastewater treatment is a critical process in terms of maintaining water quality, and it's a huge problem in other places, but it's not here, and that's 100% because of the water treatment plant. So he's going to talk to us a little bit about what they do and how it works, and give us an overview of the processes involved. And then secondly, when you throw a brewery into a town, that adds a lot of wastewater. That adds a lot of processing water, and it adds a lot of, I'd say, headaches for a wastewater treatment plant. So we're going to have Robert Millspaugh, who's, did I say it right? There he is, over there, who's going to talk about the dynamics of a brewery in the middle of a town that has relatively a small impact on the lake, potentially, but really it's a really critical thing that the wastewater treatment plant is there to take care of the wastewaters in the city. So sewage and wastewater is an important pollutant for most water systems. If we look around the country, eutrophication, or the enrichment of nutrient concentrations, is the #1 threat to fresh waters globally, really. So the fact that we have such an incredible system here in Bigfork should really be noted. So I'd like to present our two speakers with a token of our appreciation. So they're sitting down, I'll hand them over this way. There's a poster, a Flathead Lake poster. I haven't marked on there where the sewage treatment plant is, but I think you probably know. So without much further ado, I think we'll hand it over to Julie first, and then Robert will follow up with what happens when you throw thousands and thousands of gallons of water into a treatment plant. So I'd just like to reaffirm that this is a critical conservation. I would say it's a privilege to have such a place here, and it's a really important process that keeps Flathead Lake keeps it clean, and it's something very special. So here we go. Thank you very much.
Hi, Hi, I'm Julie Spencer. I manage Bigfork Water and Sewer District. I've been manager since 2003. I was born and raised in the Flathead Valley. The valley is very important to my family. They moved here in the early 1900s, and keeping this area clean has been a huge goal of mine. Bigfork has always been a special place. They looked around in the 1950s and 60s and said, you know, we have a lot of density, we're in close proximity to the lake, and we have soils that don't do well with septic tanks. And so the concerned citizens of Bigfork went to Flathead County and said, we want to get taxed to get a sewer plant. And so they asked Flathead County to put in a sewer treatment plant and a collection system near the lake area.
Not very.
Pardon?
Your microphone isn't very clear.
Can you not hear me?
No, it's kind of low.
I'm sorry, I'll try to. Okay, I will try to put it closer. So the residents of Bigfork voted to be taxed to put in the very first collection system in Bigfork. It was 2 lift stations that collected wastewater from around the lake and downtown, around the bay and the river, and brought it to right below us here. The original treatment plant was a rock trickling filter treatment plant, and it did quite a good job. It had chlorine disinfection at the end and discharged right below where the highway bridge is now. When Bigfork continued to grow and there was even more concern about nutrients getting into the lake, in the 1980s they built a new treatment plant, and that was a media trickling filter plant, and they used the chemical aluminum sulfate that would help bond to the phosphorus to keep the phosphorus out of the lake. And about that time, they said, "County, you don't need to run it anymore. We will run the plant ourselves." And so at that point, they formed the Bigfork Sewer District on their own, and eventually took on the water system from BWSD, and so then it became a water and sewer district in the early mid-1980s. The new treatment plant had sand filtration and UV disinfection. It did a really good job, but it was at its end of its life about 5 or 10 years ago, and so we started looking at what kind of new facility can we build, because there's even more stringent permit limits now, and we needed to remove more nitrogen to keep those nutrients out of the lake and keep the lake cleaner. And so we went around to different places, looked at what can we do. We have a bigger property. You can't put in a big facility in a residential area. So we ended up making a membrane bioreactor. So in Bigfork, now we have a collection system that serves about 1,200 people. It brings the water in with using 15 different lift pumps because of all the hills and different elevations that we deal with. Brings it into the treatment plant. First we pump it through what we call the Headworks facility. And the Headworks is a fine screen that screens out all the paper products, all the plastics, and all what we call knickknacks, things that people flush that shouldn't be flushed. Okay. And we also remove grit, things like coffee grounds and dirt and gravel and little bits of rocks that end up getting into the system, so that nothing hurts the membranes that are at the end of the treatment plant. After the wastewater goes through the Headworks, then it goes into what we call an activated sludge process, and I'll discuss that a little bit more as I talk about this presentation. This presentation is something I put together for 4th graders, so I hope it's not over your heads.
You're not smart
Okay, I adapted it a little bit. I don't have that on there for the 4th graders. Yes.
No, it says beer.
I know, this isn't for the 4th graders. This is what they usually see. So I I explain to kids that what we do, we always eat foods. And so we take food, and it's for nutrition and energy. And I tell them it helps them grow. Most of us try not to grow too much, but we still need energy. So when we eat the food, we chew it up, it starts breaking it down. The saliva and the chemicals in our body break the food down into smaller particles that our body can use. And most of us take probiotics to help our gut bacteria. And those are bugs that are in our digestive tract that help us break the food down in ways that we can use it. And after we use as much as we can, we get rid of the rest. Okay? And most of what is flushed and goes down the drains in Bigfork is water. About 98% water, only about 2% solids. Which is a good thing because it helps get it to the plant. But we also don't want too much water, like from storm drains or from roof drains, some pumps, because then we use the energy to treat water that doesn't need to be treated in our facility. All of the pipes then lead to our treatment plant. And I don't know if any of you have seen the building, it's just right below us, less than a block away. And this is our facility that treats our wastewater. And like I said, it goes through the headworks, screens out all the big particles, washes and compacts it. What we take out is washed and cleaned well enough that we can put it in a dumpster and take it to the landfill. It's a relatively inert product. And the clean stuff goes into basins in the plant. And it kind of looks like mud, but when you walk in there, it smells more like freshly turned earth. It's aerated and it smells like soil. If you were to walk in my treatment plant, you'd go, it doesn't smell bad. It's a very interesting process when you aerate this stuff, which is mostly bugs. It's the bugs that are naturally occurring in your gut that are discharged in the waste that are what do the work. We've broken it down small enough so that they can use it for their nutrition and their energy so they grow more bugs. The biggest job we have is optimizing their environment so that they can do the best job they can. We have certain bugs that like air, certain bugs that don't like air, and they each do different parts of the job of removing the waste from the water. So we have a whole bunch of different bugs. I don't know if you can see this very well, but there are a variety of different types of bugs, very small, microscopic obviously, that clean our water for us. The solids, once we're done using them, again, are land applied. We own a farm by the dumpsters on the Summers Cutoff Road, and that's 317 acres surrounding the dumpster site is where we land apply those nutrients that are good for the soil, but they're not good for the lake. So we take those nutrients and grow mostly small grains, some barley for Anheuser-Busch, and those nutrients again begin the cycle, so it just goes in the cycle. You feed the plants feed us, we feed the bugs, and so on. It just becomes a cycle of beneficial use. The water that we discharge is that clean. It looks like drinking water. It's cleaner than most drinking water in most cities, has less contaminants that you would find in most city water. We use UV disinfection, so there isn't chlorine, and it is safe for fishing, it's safe for swimming, it's boating, and all the activities that all of us enjoy. And one of the things I teach the kids is the angry toilet. These are things we don't want to put in our treatment plant. We don't put trash down. We don't put any more pills down than you can help. Don't flush your extra pills. Our plant, our bugs are not designed to remove those pharmaceuticals. And when you get a mix of all the different pharmaceuticals, you don't know what you're getting. And it can be really harmful to aquatic life. So what you take yourself obviously is going to go in, but don't put any additional ones in. And kids will often flush toys, extra paper towels, minimize how much paper products and plastics go into the wastewater, because some of it does break down and get into the water, and it's not really good for aquatic life. I always tell the kids, don't flush anything that you shouldn't eat. So, not that you would eat everything, you don't need toilet paper, but you potentially could. Okay? So clean water goes out right below the bridge here. We have a 0.7 micron ultrafiltration membrane system in the plant that filters the water, and then it goes past UV disinfection. So anything that could have gotten past the membranes is then inactivated, so it can't harm anyone. Does anybody have any questions? Yes?
Is 98% water, 2% solids, is that
Typical? I would say in Montana it is typical. Maybe in areas where you have droughts, you probably have a higher concentration of solids because they have the low flush toilets. We don't have the big shower heads, and we are not as conscious of conserving water as maybe in the Southwest. Yes.
Should the storm drains and the sewer runoffs be on separate runs?
They are.
You're saying that you get storm drains too?
Everywhere that we have a main or under a street and there's a manhole, those pick hole lids that you use, when the water runs over, it goes into our storm drains. So we're now trying to put in a stormwater system that diverts it away from our manholes, and so we don't get that overflow. And anybody that has a roof drain that goes into their sewer system, their sewer drain, will add stormwater to our system, and we try to minimize that. Yes?
So Summers water sewer going to your system?
Summers and Lakeside have a combined lagoon system, so they do not discharge to a water body. They actually take the water out of their treatment plant and apply it to alfalfa fields.
Where is the treatment?
Pardon?
Where is the treatment?
The treatment plant is north of Summers and east of Highway 93, and you can't see it from the road. Yes? And that's a very good question. The question was, is there a move to get more of the systems around the lake on a system? Like Lake Tahoe has a surrounding system that keeps all of the wastewater out of Lake Tahoe. This is a big lake, and we just have it in isolated areas. The forethought of the people in the early 60s that put in a collection system in Bigfork have allowed us to have a system where people who didn't have as much foresight now run into the obstacle of huge costs, lack of grants, lack of easements, and as Woods Bay, if any of you have been involved with that Woods Bay attempt to get a sewer system, incredibly expensive, hundreds of millions, just a ton of millions of dollars just to bring in Woods Bay, to bring them here. That's not to say anywhere, Dayton, and all of the other smaller communities around the lake really would benefit by having treatment. But even now you can't get a discharge permit at all. Yes?
Do you actively monitor the lake and have data that shows where the lake status is? And do you affect the lake in any way with your sewer system?
We, mostly the biological station monitors the lake, but
what data is used for that, to monitor that?
You have to ask the biological station all the stuff they do, but I know they have certain points where they just check how far down you can see the water, check for the phosphorus, check for the nitrogens, and the coliform, the chlorophyll, what kind of algae is growing. We test our own wastewater extensively, and so we know that what we're discharging, we remove about 98 to 99% of the what's called the biological oxygen demand, the part of the nutrients that take air, that we take it away from fish. We take out almost all the nitrogens and phosphorus, and the solids are almost all gone.
That is all accomplished by the bugs?
Most of it's by the bugs. The phosphorus is removed partly by biology and partly by the aluminum sulfate addition, and the aluminum sulfate causes it to clump, and so it doesn't allow it to go through the filtration system. And so that's the only chemical we actually add in our treatment plant is the aluminum sulfate.
So the biostation has its own sewage treatment plant, and we have this legendary story that has been verified of a pair of blue jeans getting flushed. What's the strangest knick-knack you've found?
A pot plant? The strangest thing, we've actually seen underwear that have names on them.
Whose underwear?
We've actually got a lot of them.
Yeah.
Like blue jeans, blew us away.
Jeans, yeah. Yeah, before we had the screening system we have now that grinds and compacts everything, we had just bar screens and we could identify more of what came through. But now it goes through a screening process. It's under cover, and so we really don't see much of it unless it were to jam the system. We really don't see it anymore. But we
Does that make you sad? You wish you could see it?
I spent enough years seeing what was coming in. I don't miss it at all.
Fair enough.
So yes.
You mentioned the anaerobic and aerobic processes.
We do.
Is that common around the lake, or is that pretty cool?
Most places have some form of anaerobic and aerobic because it helps to nitrify and denitrify the wastewater. So we have places that have bugs that don't care for air, and they do one part of the process, and then ones that like the air do the other part and help.
That's common around the lake?
Yes, it is. Yeah, most of the activated sludge plants around here have those two types of processes. Yes.
I think it's important, Julie, that you emphasize the fact that you have a very extensive ongoing testing program on that water so that you verify daily, I think, if you told me right, that the purity of the water that actually enters the lake.
That's correct. We have our own lab, and so every day we test the pH to make sure we're in our discharge permit limits for pH, and we test if there's any E. coli. E. coli can't make it through our membranes, and so even if we test ahead of the membrane, ahead of the UV disinfection, we don't have E. coli escaping into our system. We test TSS, the total suspended solids, and it's basically non-detectable. We test the biological demand, and it's mostly non-detectable. The phosphorus has got a very low limit, and the nitrogens we actually take weekly into Montana Environmental Lab, and they stay well within limit as well. Yes?
What do you do to enhance the growth of microorganisms?
What we do in the plant is, and we have Andy, who's our operations manager, who knows how to maintain the correct amount of solids in the biology, how to keep the right amount of basins going at a time. We have 3 different trains that can run 1, 2, or all 3, and he knows how much air to add. And so he watches the tests, he watches what's happening in the plant, watches how it filters, and it's just a very, very learned technique on how to optimize the bug situation. It's something you learn over years on how to optimize your bugs. So, and then the other issue we have in Bigfork, is that we're very seasonal. In the wintertime, our population goes very, very low. Our wastewater coming in is very low, so it's hard to optimize cold water coming in and a small amount of food for our bugs, because what you guys bring us is food for our bugs. And then everybody comes back all at once. So trying to optimize between the high flows and the low flows has been quite a challenge. And that's where Robert has been a huge help to us, because he's giving us food year-round from the brewery. And so, yeah, we were starving the first couple of years of our treatment plant and about falling on our face until the brewery started up. Yes.
How do you process that beer sludge for disposal?
The sludge is basically broken down into bits by the bugs. And so we just add air and give it enough time to be in a state that it's satisfactory. Mostly just aerating it and keeping it mixed.
You don't dry it?
We don't have to dry it. We take it out at still about 98% solids. Yes.
I used to teach high school, and when I had a speaker, I always asked them for their background, why they were interested in this field, what they have to go to college or.
Okay.
Yeah, can you tell us what you're doing?
Yeah, I went to school, Flathead High School. I studied a lot of math and science. I was always very interested in it. When I got out of high school, I started in chemical engineering at Montana State University. Didn't finish. Changed from Kimmy to mommy, had 5 kids. Got a business management degree at the community college after my kids went to school. Part of my business management accounting was that I needed to do an internship. At that time, they were requiring water and sewer districts to do depreciation schedules and act like they were a real business, not a government that didn't have to pay taxes. And so I had to figure out how to create a depreciation schedule for a nonprofit organization. By doing that as an internship, I ended up getting into the bookkeeping and billing, became certified as a water and wastewater operator, and that's how I ended up here.
Do sewer districts have emergency plans in case there's an outage and it will affect your 1,200 customers that are using your service? Do you have like emergency power or emergency backup with equipment? Or how do you address emergencies?
Yeah, the question was, how do we handle emergencies like when we have long-term power outages, which we've had several day-long power outages. Our treatment plant has a generator basically the size of a semi-trailer that can run the entire treatment plant. We also have generators at some of our bigger lift stations. We have generators at the well, and we also have a portable one that can go around and pump with the smaller stations, as well as being able to call in the different septic pumpers to help us if we run out of manpower to run around to all the stations. Ed? I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Question?
Do you have a sense of how efficiently the nutrients in the sludge that are applied to the field are used up during crop production? Is there runoff or?
What, the fields, she asked about the efficiency of the nutrients that are put on the crops. The nutrients that we put, we also have to test as well when we annually test how much nitrogen, how much phosphorus, how much potassium is going onto the field. I have an annual report that I give to the farmer who is we share crop with the farmer. And so we give that information to him. He does soil testing as well and decides how much additional nutrients he needs for the particular crop he's putting in. So everything's tested, not only the nutrients, but we also test for heavy metals and a lot of the different types of metals. And we do a cumulative testing to know if we're getting a buildup of the wrong types of metals on the soils as well. Yes, Ed?
What are your plans for the future?
We continue to grow, and every year we try to do better than we did last year.
Do you have plans beyond the capability of this site, or are you ready for how many years out?
This plant was designed in 2010 for a 20-year life cycle. Right now we have single stacked membranes with a capacity to add double stack it. We designed it so we could take in Woods Bay if they were able to bring up their wastewater to us. And depending on how fast Bigfork grows, most of the technology seems to be growing to make everything fit in a smaller footprint with even better treatment. So we continue to look at what treatment is out there. But so far our site's been able to handle it. And the benefit of where we're at, we have an existing discharge permit on the lake, which they're not easy to obtain anymore. And it's one of the lowest points in the district, so we can get more gravity flow and use less power to get it here.
Is the water that you discharge into the lake potable?
I don't drink it. Most people could drink it, and I've actually had people drink it and they have no harm come to them. It meets most drinking water criteria, so it technically would be potable water.
We have a septic tank, and the person who dumps our septic tank spreads it on the field. Does he have the same requirements that you do when you dump it on the field, or does he just dump it?
Technically they do.
And just dump it?
But what happens with the wastewater or a septic tank is anything that's been flushed, hasn't been screened, it's older, it's thicker. What we do with ours is thin enough, we inject it about 9 inches deep, and so it doesn't, it's never on the surface, it doesn't attract bugs, it doesn't attract rodents and vermin. And so it has very low coliform counts, so it's not likely to be a pathogen problem. So we have a little higher testing standard, even though technically they're all supposed to be treated the same.
Do they have any type of testing standard at all?
Pardon?
Do they have any type of testing standard at all?
They're supposed to. They're supposed to. And what would be a really great thing in this valley is if we had a place that all the septic tank haulers could take their stuff, it could be screened, processed, and applied in a similar method that we do.
How much water is actually leaving plants going into the lake?
Currently about 300,000 gallons a day. It's about 170,000 in the winter and goes up to close to 400,000 in the middle of summer. Yes.
This is a bit of an off-beat question, I guess, but you're a sewer and water district, and I understand that you had 3 water wells and that you were forced to abandon one of them because of some problems. I wondered what happened.
The water wells that we abandoned were the ones in Eagle Bend. One of them had nitrates and one of them had radioactivity, which depending on where you test it was either within permit or not. We chose to get rid of the Eagle Bend wells, and we now have 4 wells drilled. We're using currently 3 of them in a deep aquifer that has basically pristine water that does not need to be treated with chlorine. It's likely that they are from farming activities that happened in the area prior. There were old dairies and stuff in the area that may have caused contamination in the aquifer that those wells are in.
All right, well, thank you very much, Julie. That was excellent. I'd just like to reaffirm that I think they're our number one friend in terms of keeping the lake clean. They do a great job. So up next, we'll find out what happens when you build a brewery about, I don't know, 500 yards from the treatment plant and how they deal with that amount of waste. All right. Hold it. Everybody wait a second. Wait another sip of beer. You all set? All right, he's ready. Here's Robin.
Hey folks, can you hear me? Awesome. My name is Rob. I'm the plant manager here at Flathead Lake Brewing Company. That means I do a lot of different things here. The thing I do that's most relevant tonight is manage our wastewater stream. So I'm really excited to talk to you all tonight. Partly because I don't really get out much, so it's nice to see you all sit down, have a beer, and actually talk with some people. Also, it's a really exciting time for wastewater here in Bigfork. It's a huge challenge to bring on an industry like a brewery in a community that's been predominantly residential waste for so long. At the same time, as we overcome this challenge, there's a huge opportunity, as Julie kind of alluded to, for us all to benefit and move forward. So let's talk about some wastewater. And I lied, we need to talk about water first. So The water we use here in the brewery, ultimately the majority of it is going to go down the drain and become wastewater. So breweries throughout the U.S. typically use between about 3 and 8 barrels of water per barrel of beer brewed. That's quite a bit. The average is kind of right around 4.3. Last year in 2015, we probably did right about 6 barrels of water per barrel of beer brewed. This year we're averaging more like 4 1/3. So certainly we're improving since last year was our first year here. To visualize things, what that means is for every 12-ounce beer that we produce, we're using 12 cans and 1 4-ounce taster worth of water. So 4 1/3 barrels per barrel of beer, quite a bit. It kind of puts us right there in the average with these other breweries. That was from 2010, so maybe we're still a little bit behind, but in any case, we're improving, and that's good news. So now that we know how much water we're using, we can figure out how much wastewater we're producing. So we can take our 4 cans of beer plus our 4-ounce taster, and we subtract out the can of beer that ultimately will be sold as product. And then we have to adjust for some other losses. We're losing water to evaporation during the brewing process. We're losing water with our spent grains that go out to the farmers to feed their livestock. And we also subtract out our restrooms because we keep our septic waste separate from our industrial waste. So it works out to be about a can and that 4-ounce taster that we are subtracting from our total water usage. And that results in about 3 cans of beer, or 3 cans of wastewater for every can of beer we produce. So you can see from that clearly, brewing is by nature kind of a wasteful industry, unfortunately. But having said that, all brewers are very aware of the waste that we produce. Since it takes such an intense amount of effort to manage this waste stream, we're constantly striving to reduce it as much as possible, looking for new techniques to reduce it, and striving to increase our water efficiency too, because water is essential to our industry. And if we go back, you can see that nationally on average, we're kind of trending towards less and less water usage, which is great news. So what does this wastewater look like? Where does it come from? A lot of it is processed water. We do a lot of cleaning, sanitizing, rinsing around the brewery. That is a big portion of our wastewater. When we package, we're also generating a lot of wastewater. About 6% of the beer I package will go down the drain as just due to foaming, plus whatever rinse water we use for rinsing the cans, kegs, and whatnot. We also have residual beer. Every time we move beer from one tank to another, there's a little bit left in the bottom. That unfortunately is wasted. Also the beer that we sell in kegs, when it comes back, sometimes it's got a residual amount of beer left in there, and that will go down the drain as well. So you guys need to make sure you do your part and drink all your beer out there so that I don't have to deal with it when it comes back here. There's also Trub, which is a funny German word for spent hop particles and proteins that coagulate at the end of the brewing process. And I got a picture of it right there on the bottom right because no one seems to know what it looks like. It's kind of, just a little pancake that forms at the end of the brewing process. So that'll go down the drain as well. We have spent yeast. So every time we ferment a beer, we're growing a population of yeast. And we can reuse a portion of that population when we brew the next beer. But unfortunately, we generate more yeast than we can use. So a portion of that yeast does get wasted. Are there any bakers out there? No? All right, let's talk. There's also a fermentation blow-off. You can see the bucket up there on the right. That's kind of just during the fermentation process, they're creating gas blowing off dead cells, residual beer, sugars, stuff like that. And then last but not least, or actually it is the least too, our utilities, our boiler, will have a little bit of wastewater from blowdowns and condensate and stuff like that. This is just kind of a breakdown of what breweries, where breweries use water and therefore generate wastewater throughout their facilities. And then what does this wastewater look like? What are we concerned about with it? I mean, all these parameters are potentially hazardous to a lake like the Flathead. You know, they can cause eutrophication, like Sean touched on, and they are all treatable with you know, biological treatment like we have here in the city, but they need to be in the correct format. So really the biggest issue that we see up here is the variability of all these different parameters. You know, the brewing industry is a batch-oriented process, so we brew a batch of beer and that waste goes down the drain. We clean that tank, that waste goes down the drain. After fermentation, we'll move the beer and we'll generate that waste. So the waste is varying not only in time and volume, but also in its quality. You know, all these different wastes that we produce have different pH, different BOD, and that inconsistency is very difficult for a wastewater treatment plant to handle. I mean, if you guys, you know, don't eat all day and then you go drink 6 IPAs or something, chances are you're not going to feel too good. But, you know, if you eat just the right amount of food, drink just the right amount of beer, and maintain all day, you're going to have an awesome time. And it's no different for the wastewater treatment plant. So, knowing all that, what is a brewery supposed to do? Hopefully you can do nothing. That would be the best case scenario. If you are a small brewery, if your community is large enough, if you are located far enough away from your municipal treatment plant, your waste is going to blend in with the residential waste and the city might not even notice the difference. That is completely not our case. If you look right out the window, you can probably see the wastewater treatment plant over there. You know, they're a couple hundred feet away, and they are in turn a couple hundred feet away from that awesome freshwater lake. So anything that we produce up here, if we don't modify it in any way, they're going to see it right away, and it's going to cause a problem down there. So that's not an option for us. Your next option is to pump and dump, and that's what a lot of small breweries do. That's what we do down in Woods Bay. You have a holding tank. You put all your waste in that holding tank, and you fill it up, you pump it down, it goes and gets land applied, much like your septic tank. But as you get to this size of a brewery or larger, it becomes cost prohibitive, and it's environmentally unsustainable because of all the amount of trucking that's involved. On the complete opposite side of the spectrum there, we have treat everything. Your very big breweries, your New Belgiums, your Sierra Nevadas, they can put in what's called like an anaerobic digester or something like that can collect all of their waste and not only treat it to a very high degree, but they can create methane as a byproduct and burn that in a special boiler or create electricity and offset their energy bills. So it's really economic for them. Unfortunately, there's not really the same economics at a smaller brewery level. The technology just doesn't exist at this point, and I'm sure it will in the very near future. But in the meantime, you know, what is a brewery in between supposed to do? And it's something in between. You know, you might pump and dump a portion of your waste. You might treat another portion of your waste. You're gonna basically do whatever you need to do in order to make your waste acceptable to the municipal treatment plant, and in some cases even beneficial to the municipal treatment plant. So where do you start? It's kind of helpful to start from the bottom up when you're kind of looking at treating brewery waste, and like we said, variability is the biggest problem we have. So what you do to address variability is you do this operation called equalization. Essentially, you put in a big tank. All your discrete flows from every process go into this tank, and you pump out of the tank at a constant rate. So when you're producing beer, you know, the level in your tank is increasing, and at night or on the weekends when you're not producing beer, the level is decreasing, but you're always pumping out at a constant and relatively low rate. And so what you're doing is equalizing the flow. You're taking these peaks and valleys that your influent have, and you're making it flat and much more manageable for the wastewater treatment plant. You're also equalizing your BOD, your pH, all these other parameters because you're collecting all these different sources of waste, your brewing waste, your packaging waste, your cleaning waste, and they're all getting mixed together in this tank and are feeding forward as a homogeneous mixture. So now we have a consistent and constant source of food for the city. Once we address equalization, kind of the next issue is pH. Basically, you can put in another tank, have a pH meter in there. If it's too low, you add caustic. If it's too high, you add pH, and get your pH right where the city wants it. The next question is, do we need to reduce our BOD or TSS? And if the answer is yes, the easiest thing to do is to never put it down the drain in the first place. So we can do this operation called side streaming. And what we do in that case is we identify the biggest contributors to BOD, TSS, which would be yeast and tree. And we can take that high strength waste and divert it from the rest of our waste. What we do right now is we put that in one of these portable tubs, and we set it out back. And when we fill up all the tubs, we call a hauler. He pumps them down, goes and takes them to the land application. I'm also trying to work with the composters to figure out if they have a use for it. And if any of you guys want this material, please come and talk to me after the presentation. So if you do those 3 steps, equalization, pH balancing, side streaming, and you're still not quite there, your next options are on-site treatment or surcharges. Basically, this waste would require some additional kind of biological treatment. You just have to decide, do you want to do that on site, or do you want to pay the city for the extra effort required to treat this waste? And so if we do, all 4 of these steps, or whatever it takes, I should be clear, we're not trying to remove everything from the waste. We're trying to find a common denominator. We want to find a waste that's not going to be detrimental to the city, but we also want to give them something that's usable during the winter when a portion of our population are not here, so we can make up for that lost population and sustain the biological process down in the city until everybody shows up again in the summer. So it's already chugging when people get here and it doesn't have to adjust. So that's the goal. When you look at this on paper, you might think these are 2 conflicting things, a brewery and a wastewater treatment plant, but there really is this opportunity for cooperation here. And another opportunity that we have for cooperation is this water reuse system that we do. So down at the city, they treat all the municipalities' wastewater and produce a clean effluent. Julie said she wouldn't drink it, but I also might not drink it, but we can certainly use it up here for a host of other operations. So what we do is we pump it back up the hill, and we use it in kind of like a geothermal system, so we can use it as a source of heat and a sink for heat. And internally, that allows us to remove heat from our fermentation tanks or our tank cooler and use that same heat to heat the building in the winter or operate our snowmelt manifolds. So that allows us some savings on our energy bills and whatnot. So it's kind of taking this concept of being close to your wastewater treatment plant as being an issue and putting it into an advantage. We're really appreciative of the folks down there at the treatment plant for being open-minded and cooperative during this process. It's been awesome working with them. And how many of you guys are on the connected to the city sewer? Just 2? All right, well, data doesn't count, but whether you knew it or not, you are helping us brew beer here every day. So I was hoping to cheers more people, but I'll raise my glass to you. May your toilet always flush and your tap always flow. Cheers. And that's all I got. If you guys have questions. Go ahead.
So it did concern me that when she said she wouldn't drink it and you wouldn't, but you were bringing it back here, that you're going to say, so the beer you're drinking tonight
No, that's one thing I didn't mention. It's a closed system, and there's like 3 levels of separation, so that treated effluent, there's absolutely no possibility of it touching any sanitary surface or beer. So
Thank you.
Rest assured.
We can make a sample up though.
We'll pilot that beer.
Can you talk about the importance of waste treatment in the brewing facility? How can make or break it?
Yeah, it's a killer for the brewing industry. You know, in the first couple slides we talked about just the sheer amount of brewing waste that's produced, and you know, you can certainly end up pouring a lot of money into it if you don't go about it the right way, and we've learned that as well.
Talking about helping the sewage treatment plant through the winter, how did your brewing change from summer?
The question was, how does the brewery help the city treatment plant during the winter, and how does our facility change throughout the season, the year? Yeah. So, you know, we have seasonal variability with our production too, but we are here, you know, year-round. So we provide basically a supplementary source of food for the bugs down at the treatment plant. When in other cases, you know, they might get pretty hungry over the winter time. And, you know, unfortunately, kind of our peak season does align with the peak season here, you know, our beer production and the tourist season here. So we'll have to see, you know, how to best make those peaks interact, if we need to adjust our treatment abilities up here during that time, or what. But that'll be something we'll have to figure out down the road. Go ahead.
So a follow-up on Jim's question, and this might be more for Julie, but how dramatic is the change, the seasonal change in the influent waste coming into the treatment plant?
Something about 100-something thousand versus 400,000 per day, gallons per day. Yeah, so it's almost a quarter. Yeah, a quarter of the flows during the winter versus the summer. And so, you know, we're not going to make up those flows here in the brewery for sure. You know, we're talking about a couple thousand gallons a day maximum, but this is pretty concentrated waste that we produce up here. So in terms of the amount of food, we can at least get closer. You know, we're not going to make it all up, but we'll help get closer. Go ahead.
What kind of testing?
The question is, what kind of testing do we have to do? We're still working on our permit, so we're going to know more on that, you know, in the near future. But certainly, we want to test those parameters that I had up there on the board: pH, BOD, the nutrients like phosphorus and nitrogen, fats, oils, and greases. We're kind of still uncertain as to the role those play in our waste. So we, in the past, have been doing third-party testing. We'll collect samples from our waste stream and bring them up to Montana environmental labs and have them analyzed up there. But we're still working out exactly what our long-term sampling plan is going to be.
Who issues the permit?
Can you repeat that?
Who issues the permit?
So our permit is issued by the Sewer and Water District, and they in turn have a permit from the DEQ, so it all kind of goes back upstream. Go ahead. You.
How does the different types of beer that you make here affect the wastewater?
It shouldn't be all that different. You know, I mean, the higher gravity beers are going to have more sugars and more alcohol in it, so a bit more BOD there. But you know, in general, it's not going to be a huge difference beer to beer. One of the theories we have, like I was saying, we're not quite sure the role of fats, oils, and greases in our wastewater. It's not something that I've seen a lot of studies on, but in a couple of our sampling analyses, we've seen pretty high levels. And one of the theories we have right now is because of the amount of IPA that we brew here, maybe those essential oils from the hops are contributing to fats, oils, and greases. But that's something we'll have to look into in the future.
Don't you have
have use pits for this place?
We do, but those are for the restaurant. Yeah. So, like I was saying, you know, we in the brewery, we separate our septic waste from our industrial waste. The restaurant waste is part of that septic waste. The brewery waste gets handled in a different manner. Great.
What's your background?
What's my background? So I grew up in upstate New York on some lakes and rivers, and very quickly grew an appreciation for water. Decided to go to college to learn about water. So I went to Colorado and studied water treatment and management, a subsect in environmental engineering. And also while I was at college, I spent a lot of time around beer. So when I got out of school, I found a job at a brewery. Go ahead.
How similar is the operation here to the one in Woods Bay?
Pretty different. Well, I mean, the brewing process is, you know, the same. The wastewater operation is kind of different. Like I said down there, it's a small volume of wastewater, so we can just put it in a holding tank, pump it down, send it away, and land apply it. We can't do that here, so you know it's in our best interest to send it down to the city and you know, make that waste acceptable so that we can send it down to the city. Were you more interested in the brewing process itself or just the wastewater?
Yeah, how to deal with the wastewater.
Go ahead.
I just want to say I got like 45 years of industrial and engineering and stuff like that. I'm really impressed with you.
All right.
Thank you. Anything else? Hillary.
The wastewater generally higher or lower in pH or is it very?
So it's process by process, it varies a lot. So our beer is acidic, our cleaning cycles will be pretty caustic because we clean the, you know, like sodium hydroxide. But when we store that waste for a long period of time, like you would in an equalization tank, the tendency for brewery waste is to become more acidic because there's a leftover amount of yeast in there, and yeast wants to continue fermenting whatever it can. So it's going to continue the fermentation process, it's going to make the waste more acidic. So that's why once you put an equalization, you want to look at pH balancing, add some caustic, bring that pH back up. You know, our resting pH, if I don't do anything to it, is right around 4. So that's pretty acidic and potentially hazardous to the infrastructure.
So if it was going to be on the more basic side, what acid would you use?
I mean, there's a lot of different options. It's kind of dictated by market value of whatever acid's cheaper at the time. People will use sulfuric a lot. It's also going to be dictated by, you know, what does the discharge permit look like. You know, some places might be able to use phosphoric acid to bring their pH down. We wouldn't want to do that here because there's such stringent limitations on phosphorus out on Flathead Lake. Go ahead.
You know, I would just like to say is, you know, a person who appreciates a good brew, to put a facility together like this, cooperation between the treatment plant and the facility in those planning stages was obviously huge. You know, that there was a lot of pre-planning done. And that's something that we don't know as the general public, you know. So kudos to you guys for putting together such a cooperative effort
Sure, and
making this happen. Yeah.
It's an ongoing challenge. It's not done yet, and we'll continue to do that.
No more questions? Another round of applause. I think that was actually the most fascinating Science on Tap we've had yet. I mean, I was blown away. The parallels between the process in-house to homogenize it and make a continuous outlet is between the lake and here is actually striking. So as a lake ecologist, I can tell you that all the things he just talked about are actually happening out there too, but just at a little bit higher volume than you might imagine the brewery produces. Outstanding job. That was excellent. That was really excellent. Another round of applause. Thank you. All right, so we have a big drawing here for the prize. So Greg, if you wouldn't mind, I wouldn't take the top one, but maybe the third one down or so. All right. Oh boy, Jim's Sticka. Hey! How about that? Look at that. Yeah, no, we had Jim Kraft over here all excited. He's never seen the lake before, so. So not only, hopefully, are you impressed with the process here, but now you can be impressed with the Flathead Lake map. I'll hand this to Tom. I should mention we have maps for sale. If you weren't a lucky winner, such as Jim, you can purchase one. I'd really like to just say that that was an excellent presentation. I was really impressed.
Keep going, keep going.
Yeah.
Just keep going.
We're laid back here, folks. That was highly distracting. But I would like to hope that we could continue this conversation with Julie and Robert. That was just, I couldn't be more impressed. That was great. Thank you very much. Again, please join us next month down at the Finley Point Grill. I don't think we have anything else. Please stick around and get, what? You got a question? The maps are $20. So a fair price, I would say, for the quality of product. Anyway, so next month, Finley Point Grill, we'll have a Nobel laureate. Unbelievable. So please come. And I think both Julie and Robert will stick around if you have any one-on-one questions. Another round of applause. What a presentation.
I'm sorry, I'm the owner of the brewery next door. If I've been down to the sewer district and I find it fascinating with Julie and that, I'm offering brewery and working out with Robert. If you guys want to really see the physical side of this, please join us and we can set a date, come on down. And I don't know if Julie, but I find it fascinating, all the circulations is interesting. As far as the brewery is concerned, you're more than welcome to work it out with Robert and David and see what you can see. Okay?